Save the King!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pod Save the King. It has been a busy week as usual in Royal Land, and we are going to take you through all the events, all the engagements, all the trials and tribulations of the Windsors. I'm your host, Russell Myers, the Royal Editor of the Daily Mirror, and I'm joined as ever by Jennifer Newton, Deputy Royal Editor at the Mirror. And first of all, I suppose I apologise for me sounding like I've been chewing gravel for the last week, but I've been on my book tour. The book William and Catherine is out now. Hopefully, those of you who are interested will have picked up a copy. Super excited to share it with you all, and please send me any of your thoughts, any of your posts on social media that we can share. Love to hear from all of you, and thank you so much for all the support over the last few weeks. It's been so kind, and I've really appreciated it. But let's first of all dive in to what's been happening in the world of Windsor, because as I said, it has been pretty busy, but it's not been, all doom and gloom. We've seen royals out and about. We've had William and Catherine in Walesmania. It was dubbed by the Daily Telegraph as William and Catherine went off-piste to make unscheduled stops in the rain, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I wanted to start, Jennifer, with a bit of glitz and glamour, not just us, but the BAFTA Awards. It's been the first time for a couple of years that we've seen, certainly I think it's 3 years since we've seen William and Catherine out and about at the BAFTAs, but they didn't disappoint, did they? It was a pretty glitzy night. I think let's first of all come on to them as a couple, because we've spoken previously about, the PDAs have been on show. I think they had a bit of matchy going on with their outfits. I was very jealous of William's. What is that? What is it? It's not velour. Velvet jacket.
Yeah.
And what colour are we calling this? Is it sort of an off pink, a bit of a light indigo? What do you reckon?
So I think, it's something like that, isn't it? Pink. I think we'll just say pink.
We'll just say pink. Yeah, but them walking up the red carpet after after the stars had sort of posed for all the pictures, going inside, speaking to some of the people involved in BAFTA and some of the people up for awards as well. And of course, there was all the attention on the Prince and Princess of Wales. William as the patron of the Prince of Wales presenting one of the awards as well. But of course, it was on the front pages of all the newspapers the next day, possibly for the wrong reasons. I mean, there's obviously been a lot going on with the former Prince Andrew, his arrest, the investigations that are ongoing, his potential removal from the line of succession, which the British government have been leading on. We'll come on to that a little bit later, but certainly it was William's comments about the fact that he had not yet watched the BAFTA Best Picture nominee Hamnet because he needed to be in a calm mood. Now, we know what William is like. He's a very intelligent man. He certainly knew that there were journalists and cameras and broadcast journalists next to him filming his every move as he was meeting people along the meet and greet line. But it's interesting how people have interpreted this, because obviously it is open to interpretation. Catherine had said previously that she'd watched a highly emotional film, it left her in floods of tears. But when William was asked, had he seen it, he said, "I need to be in quite a calm state, and I'm not at the moment. I will save it." Now, Hamlet obviously tells the story of the tragic death in childhood of Shakespeare's son Hamlet and the grief of his parents. And I imagine you do need to be in the right frame of mind to watch that film. I haven't had the pleasure of watching it yet. I probably do need a couple of days lying down in a dark room, judging by the sound of my voice. But what did you think of William's comments? I mean, did you think it was purposeful? Do you think it was a mistake from his point of view? How did you view it?
I'm not sure if it was purposeful, but I don't think it was a mistake either, because I think a lot of people have wanted him to say something about Andrew and the situation that's been facing him. And this is a way of him saying something without putting out a formal statement and leaving it open. Maybe that's what that was the idea, to leave it open to people's interpretation, because you could read into it as he's just talking about the film, but you could also read into it as he's talking about the other things that are happening in his life at the same time, which I think that's what everyone else kind of took from that, didn't they?
Well, they did, and I was quite surprised about how open to interpretation it was, and how people were either side of the fence. There was not a lot of people who thought, "Oh, well, I'm not sure." I mean, I absolutely thought that he said it. He's intelligent enough to know anything he does say will be poured over, and it certainly has been a testing time. I mean, gosh, the last few weeks have been incredibly fraught and anxious for the royal family. Let's just move back a couple of weeks where we were in Saudi Arabia, and we heard from Kensington Palace talking about how deeply concerned the Prince and Princess of Wales were at the continued allegations surrounding Andrew. We obviously know that he has continued to vehemently deny a lot of the allegations in front of him in respect to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The arrest on allegations of misconduct in a public office are quite separate to what we've previously heard, and we haven't heard from Andrew in regards to those. But of course, then we heard from the King about his profound concern, and then after the arrest, talking about the law must take its course. Let me state clearly, we will continue to do our duty, so on and so forth. Now, the issue around the monarchy, the family business, the firm, whatever you want to call it, is the hierarchy. And certainly now the King has been very, very clear in his statement saying that the law must take its course. Nobody would want to prejudice any of those investigations that are ongoing at the moment. And it's very difficult for William to now, and indeed Catherine, to come out and say, this is how we feel, in an official capacity. Now, those of you who have read the serialization of my book, or indeed sort of poring over it over the last few days, will know William's attitude overall towards Andrew, and what he would have potentially done with Andrew, exiling him out of the family after the Newsnight interview. However, we are in much more serious ground at the moment because of the arrest and the running investigations that are currently taking place. I took it to mean that it was a very cute response. Yes, it can be interpreted to mean this quite distressing and emotional film, but also it tells you about his state of mind. And certainly it's no wonder he will have found the last few weeks pretty distressing. I mean, it's not just the family's future, people discussing what the future of the monarchy will be like, whether it has a future. But also, I thought we've reached a point where we've had over the last few days members of parliament standing up and openly discussing their reflections and their anecdotes of either meeting Andrew throughout his time as a royal or his time as a trade envoy, more specifically, but using language like entitled, arrogant, rude. I mean, this surely is not only a line in the sand, it's deeply concerning for the rest of the royal family. That has the reverence gone now? Has the cloak been lifted?
I think it kind of has. Yeah, it has been lifted. I mean, for people, some of the things that the politicians were standing up in the House of Commons and saying was, you couldn't imagine that happening maybe even 6 months ago, really. And I know that it has been limited to just Andrew, but then it's like, well, where do you draw the line? Like, if I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if there was another scandal involving another member of the royal family, and then it's, oh well, we can discuss that in Parliament. How long is it before it's just open season?
Well, not only that, I think we can take it deeper, because let's for instance look at a situation where the royals are criticised in certain quarters. Members of Parliament are protected by parliamentary privilege. That gives them the opportunity to discuss whether that's business of the state or indeed giving their opinions on members of the royal family. And this wasn't just a few standing up; it was a direction from the Speaker of the House, who said that it could be discussed, and they were queuing up. I mean, there's people waiting essentially in line to give their reflections. I'm not necessarily sure whether that reflects well on those individuals who had personal experiences of Andrew. Did they report their concerns at the time? We know over the last couple of weeks that the King and Buckingham Palace have said that they will reveal any files or folders or information that the police want to look into. And indeed, after these calls of a public inquiry relating to Andrew's role as a trade envoy in and in respect to the ongoing police investigations, we could see a cascade of information coming into the public sphere, whether that is memos made by people, emails sent about Andrew or other members of the royal family. Were there allegations or concerns raised about his behaviour whilst representing the British state abroad in this role? So I think we are in very, very dangerous territory for the royal family. And can you imagine a situation where other members of parliament might not take too kindly to, when we get to the end of the year, the league table of the king at 77 and having cancer, doing 400 odd engagements, and the Prince and Princess of Wales doing 200 or 300? Will they then come in for criticism for people who, feel a need that their constituents should be made aware of it if they don't have political particular leanings towards the royal family? I mean, where does this stop?
Well, I think this is the thing now. The can of worms has been opened, and you can't put them back in the can. It's set a precedent now, I think.
Well, it certainly has, and I think that I was asked this week what I thought the royals would be doing, and I forget the exact language, but in Charles's statement talking about with the fact that me and my family will continue with our duty as we always have made a promise to the nation. And what are they expected to do? I mean, we've seen the royals out and about in force this week, and I wouldn't expect them to be locked in a war room, so to speak. I'm sure that is taking a fair bit of their time, discussing it amongst each other, discussing it with the senior courtiers, monitoring the police investigations if there are any significant developments. Of course, we saw the arrest of Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, the former US ambassador as well. We know that certainly Mandelson was a big supporter of Andrew getting the trade envoy role. Were these two men, what was the relationship between these two men? Was Andrew's role as a trade envoy undersigned by senior members of the government? Did people have to be persuaded? Were there any allegations that came to light? I mean, all of this is going to come out in the wash, and it certainly won't be overnight, because as much as the British government have said that they can now consider removing Andrew from the line of succession, I think that was a particular sticking point in public about the fact that he was still in line to the throne, despite the fact him being 8th, still a councillor of state. Are these purely performative actions, or do you think people care about the fact that he's still in line to the throne, a councillor of state? Do you think people understand that, or do you think it was purely performative from the government?
Well, I don't think people maybe not understand the Councillor of State role, but I think the line of succession status is something people do understand, that, he's 8 steps away from taking the top job. So it is unlikely that he's ever going to take it. But it does, I think, being in that position, it shows the privilege that he has and how he might have abused that privilege. And if he has done that, then he should be not allowed to use it again in the future. If that situation ever arises, no, I can't see that happening, but he should have to face consequences for that. And if that means removing him from having that status, then so be it.
Well, I think you're exactly right. It's talking about entitlement and privilege, and this absolutely speaks to all of that, because it's long been rumoured what Andrew has been like in the past, how he's treated members of the staff, people having various opinions of him throughout his trade envoy role, and even way before that. So it is definitely the right direction. I think the government probably felt under pressure. We've seen the Australian government and the New Zealand government come out in support of that. I would be absolutely shocked if any of the 15 Commonwealth realms did not get on board with the 3 that have already signalled their intention to support that kind of action. But back to the royal family. I think that we will be discussing Andrew for an awful long time, as we have over the years, and this situation is only going to get deeper and deeper, I feel. So we will certainly come back to that in future weeks. But
LifeLock, how can I help? The IRS said I filed my return,
But I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Let's move on to, I was going to say sunnier climes, but unfortunately Wales was a bit wet and windy. But we did see William and Catherine out in Wales, stopping off on schedule. I heard of, I wasn't there this week, but some of my colleagues were, talk of Walesmania descending on the town of Llandudno's. Residents of all ages surprised to meet the couple. They spent 50 minutes over schedule on certain engagements. They took a lot of time posing for selfies. Catherine playing rock, paper, scissors with school children. I mean, this is straight out the royal playbook, isn't it? And do you think this was structured? Do you think it was purposeful? Did they go out there and think, right, we've got to put our best foot forward? Or from everything that you've seen, was it? I mean, it looked like they were having a lot of fun. But what do you think the general direction would have been for Kensington Palace this week?
Well, yeah, they would have wanted to have kept everybody's focus on what the point of them going to Wales was for, which was to highlight volunteers and community in the area that they went to ahead of St David's Day, which is on Sunday, the National Day of Wales, and all of these unscheduled stops, these walkabouts that they did, I think it probably was the right idea, whether that was planned or whether it was off the cuff. I think it has actually worked for them, because I think they got quite a lot of really positive coverage from that. There was some really nice, if you think of what we've been talking about previously about Andrew and all the murkiness that's gone on there.
Yeah, pretty grim.
The images, really grim. But the images that were coming out yesterday and the videos where, Kate doing as she does with children, like just looking like she was having a nice time. She had a little girl who gave her a necklace and she was allowing her to put the necklace on her neck and posing for selfies and that sort of thing. And I suppose that could have been quite a risk in some respects, because it's only a week ago that the king was out and people were shouting at him in the street, what did you know about Andrew? And I suppose that could have happened yesterday. There's nothing to say that couldn't have happened, but it didn't. And it was a risk probably worthwhile taken, and it's really paid off for them, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's want a better word, I thought it was rather brave, because if you're going to put yourself in the line of fire and you're going to say, well, we're going to do 6-7 walkabouts, they could have done one that was very structured outside a primary school or outside a youth club, and it'd be quite unusual for people to use that as an opportunity to heckle members of the royal family. However, we have seen the Queen being heckled outside the school, and the King and being heckled. We're doing a walkabout just last week, wasn't it? I forget
in Clitheroe.
Clitheroe. And so people are well entitled to their opinion. I think there is a very, very strong feeling around the general public. There are questions being asked. And I think this is exactly the right course of action, because what option do the Royals have? They've literally at this one moment in time got one job to do, and that is to keep calm, carry on, see what happens with the police investigations, see what happens with the public inquiry or any other internal inquiry. We call it internal inquiry, which may happen. I think there will be lessons learned, perhaps about, did people let Andrew get away with his behaviours for too long? And I'm not even talking about any allegations. I'm talking about his character, his behaviour. Do you want people like that in a family business? I dare say not. But the Royals have got to, put the best foot forward, get out, do what they do best. Shine a light on their charities, the engagements, and I thought it was a lovely day. I'm just looking at some of the pictures. Both Prince and Princess of Wales looking like they're having a lot of fun. Mixing with people from age 5 to 90. The rock paper scissors game with Catherine was very, very sweet, and I think that kind of moves the dial. Nobody is saying let's forget about it. Let's try and move on, sweep it under the carpet. There are things that they have no control over. And so it is probably best that they just try and get on with the job. Now, two other, in quotes, royals who are getting on with the job. I suppose they are royals by association, but we have seen a quasi-royal tour. I love this phrase that comes out whenever we see Harry and Meghan going abroad. But I thought the trip to Jordan this week, I mean, I've always said that, regardless of what some criticisms will be about our coverage of Harry and Meghan, I've always thought that they could have been an asset to the royal family in a different universe, perhaps a parallel universe, if everything had gone to plan. But certainly, it did show you how popular they are. They were in Jordan as part of a 2-day tour. They were meeting children at a refugee camp. They went to a hospital. And they were, essentially highlighting efforts to supporting these vulnerable communities that have been affected by conflict and displacement. I've been to Jordan many, many times, and the Jordan has taken the most amount of refugees from Middle East countries than any other surrounding nation. And they were there with meeting the World Health Organization. And of course, you could argue that this is in the royal family's backyard, so to speak, because we know that the King and Queen and Prince and Princess of Wales have very, very strong relationships with the Jordanian royal family, and we've seen them go to Jordan in recent years. Should we read too much into it? In fact, they're going to Jordan, or was it simply the fact that the World Health Organization had obviously invited them, and as I said, Jordan has such a key standing in the world in accepting refugees and people who have been displaced from other Middle Eastern nations that are under conflict at the moment?
Well, I think obviously it seems like they were guests of the World Health Organization, and like it or not, whether you like Harry or Meghan or not, they do have a platform, and if they can invite somebody like Harry and Meghan on this trip with them, they're obviously going to get more coverage than they would if it was just the Director General of the World Health Organization who went. I mean, I didn't personally really know who he was before this, so I doubt anyone else did.
And I couldn't tell you his name. I mean, everybody knows who
but everyone knows who.
The world,
yeah, but everyone knows. But everyone knows who Harry and Meghan are. So
yeah,
I think if they can use their platform to do something like this, and I actually, I did see a little bit of coverage of this trip in some quarters that were being a little bit, I don't know, I thought quite unfair to them, because
as night follows day, that will always happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is true. But then I do also think that I do think it was a good trip for them, but I think the thing that always works against them is people still have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouths when it comes to them, the way that, they don't really like the way that they went on when they first left the royal family with all the interviews and the Netflix and Spare. So even if when they are doing these good, I think what I'm trying to say is it's going to take more than one good trip like this to change people's perceptions entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I just play devil's advocate. I think that you're totally right. This issue, I remember going to the Zatari refugee camp possibly 7-8 years ago, and it's still a huge problem. I mean, it's a sprawling camp, thousands upon thousands of families living in semi-permanent homes, tents. There are youth centres there. It's essentially a town made up of refugees, but it's a refugee camp. And there are kids growing up there with very, very little hope of what their future will be like. It is still an issue not only for the Jordanians, but for the wider region and for the world to really have a focus on. And certainly the World Health Organization have had a base there for many, many years. And yet it is only when you get celebrities working for the UN or UNICEF or the WHO to raise the profile. And certainly I don't think Harry and Meghan going there is a distraction at all. And we saw from Philip Hall, the British ambassador to Jordan, thanking the Sussexes for travelling there. He said, your visit, your support, your appreciation of the efforts that the United Nations, including, of course, the World Health Organization, the government of Jordan and others are making here is enormously appreciated. And just looking at the pictures and following on, let's not forget the Archwell Foundation donated $500,000 to projects including the World Health Organization, which was helping develop prosthetic limbs and provide support for children from Gaza and Ukraine. So whilst they're going on about their business, absolutely, I think it's a great thing. Will this lead to reconciliation? I saw that there was certain commentary in some of the papers this week talking not only about showing what an asset Harry and Meghan could have been, but is reconciliation with the Sussexes exactly what the firm needs at this moment in time? I would argue perhaps not. It might be a distraction from the other things, while the royal family are going in one direction. Harry and Meghan content to go in another. There may be reconciliation, but I don't think it will be winging its way anytime soon. But I did want to pick up on the King and Queen being out and about this week. Of course, we saw the King at the West Sussex Army Barracks. These were pretty jolly pictures, weren't they? Having a go at holding an air defense missile launcher.
Yeah,
he looked like he was having a great time.
I always like pictures when he gets his hands on guns, which sounds a bit wrong.
There's a great one of him. He's just sitting back, and he didn't fire it this time, but last year was firing one of these massive cannons and just looking like he was living his best life.
Yeah, I think he really enjoys these type of engagements. So yeah, he was there as the Captain General of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. So it was the first time he visited the 7th Air Defence Group Royal Artillery down in West Sussex. So yeah, I think that was it's a very typical royal engagement, isn't it? And something that supporting the military is something obviously he has to do as the commander-in-chief.
Yeah. And moving on to the Queen, we saw, I suppose, a typical royal engagement involving Paddington these days. This was part of the BBC 500 Words competition for a special episode of the One Show here in the UK. And meeting the gladiators, I was devastated because my children are gladiator obsessed at the moment. And it was steel and diamond. I would have been, oh my God, I would have been so popular in my house had I been on this engagement. But 500 Words is obviously a project from the BBC, encouraging young writers to enter the competition. The Queen has been a long-standing supporter, and again, it comes back to this: keeping on doing what you're doing. There are a lot of distractions at the moment, but these are the cogs that make the wheels turn, and long may they continue. But I know you had a specific interest in Duchess of Edinburgh that you wanted to talk about this week. She was in Somalia, I take it, and obviously following on from your fantastic trip with her last year. I mean, this is exactly what Sophie does best, isn't it? She talk about secret weapons. Surely we should be elevating the role of the Duchess of Edinburgh now, talking up her role within the central royal family.
Yeah, I think so. And this trip that she did, she went to Somalia and Kenya, where she was highlighting the issue of conflict-related sexual violence in the region. I think that's something that she's really carved out like a niche for herself within the royal family. And this type of trip, it's almost like she's the royal family's representative abroad now, isn't it? Like you see her going to so many places. Somalia, which has obviously been devastated by conflict, and loads of other places that you would term as not, usual places.
Well, they're not traditional royal, and certainly Kenya, but Somalia. You're going to Chad, DRC. I mean, these are not traditional royal tour venues, and certainly they are blighted by conflict. These African nations, and we've seen Sophie really center down on this niche of talking about the ongoing issue of conflict-related sexual violence. It's absolutely devastating for these communities. She wrote that op-ed in the Daily Telegraph just a few months ago, and I thought, this is very, very powerful. You're talking about what the royal family stands for. There is a lot of discussion about that at the moment. It obviously stands for going to communities, supporting the military, supporting the arts. I mean, we've seen all of that this week, but also the big issues. And Sophie is certainly taking on the big issues, things that wouldn't have been necessarily attached to the royal family. I know that the Queen has done that with domestic abuse and domestic violence and talking to victims. But this is particularly interesting for Sophie herself. She has spoken about this as a life's mission to shine a light on the charities and organisations who are working tirelessly in this arena. But again, there are trips being planned. There is a lot of planning ongoing at the moment. We believe Charles and Camilla are going to be going to America, United States, maybe in April. I think that'll be the lead up to the 250th anniversary of independence. Whether William goes, whether Catherine goes as well to the World Cup, that will be an interesting mode. And then, of course, we've got trips coming in later on in the autumn as well. So there is an awful lot to look forward to. We have had a couple of weeks which have been a real key moment for the royal family. It is up to them to work out how they respond to these moments. But of course, there will be a lot of talk about it. There will be a lot of discussion, not only in Parliament, but around the public and here too. So thank you very much for joining us once again this week. Do join us and the conversation at PodSave on social media. I'm at Russell J. Myers and Jennifer is at Jennifer Newton 1. We will be back with you next week, no doubt, discussing the trials and tribulations for the Windsors as once more. But hopefully we'll come to you with some great sunnier news as well. Thanks for joining. Until next time.
Pod save the king!